Uh, a question for Mr. Ali. It's clear the pandemic continues to have a significant impact on the U.S. aviation industry, particularly on airport concessionaires. Even more concerning is the fact that minority-owned small businesses are disproportionately impacted by the effect of the pandemic. Could you cover for us how the pandemic has affected AMAC members and airport concessions disadvantaged business enterprises?
Oh, yes, thank you, Congressman. It's really important to understand the process of how these work. When you look at an airport, I look at it really as a hotel, and big concessionaires, which are mainly foreign owned, secure pieces of the airport and to be able to provide services for their passengers. And as you've heard earlier, a lot of the DBEs, the status of DBE allows for them to partner with other minority and women-owned firms. And many of these concessionaires, these large concessionaires, look for women and minority-owned firms to participate, and that's how they get a pathway into being concessionaires, either from street side to airports or even beginning new businesses. A lot of the investment for these airports, as you can see, the improvements inside of the airport are improvement in shared costs by DBEs. So they're making investment in public assets based on a contract for 5, 7, or 10 years, and they have to pay those loans back typically to their master concessionaire. So when you have the COVID crisis, which took down 90% of the travel, a lot of these ACDEs are now having to still make payments, which are not being received. And because they made them in public assets, they can't get traditional funding, which is really hard because then if you can't get traditional funding from a bank, there's no way you can refinance or restructure your loan. And as a result, you find yourself in a cataclysm of debt, of not only business debt from the pandemic, but business debt from being able to pay back your loan. So not being able to get access to the PPP, it didn't help these businesses, ACDBs, and some of them weren't able to get the EIDL loan because the EIDL loan, which was once at $2 million, went down to $150. But a lot of these businesses needed an EIDL loan so that they could continue to cooperate and manage inside of these airports. So you find a lot of the concessionaires are in default, which means they're in a position where they could be eliminated from these contracts that they needed, and whatever assets they had tied up would be lost.
Yeah. And what effect would large-scale closures that of the concessionaires have on airport operations?
I think it would do a whole lot of things for airport operations. Thanks for the question. If you look at these ACDBEs or these DBEs that would be eliminated from contracts, they'll lose these opportunities. You'll have societal impacts to them, where these communities that look to these DBEs for support or hiring, so they lose all these employees. These employees would lose houses. I mean, the trickle-down effect of ACDBEs going out of business or DBEs going out of business. Please note, if you look at some of the statistical analysis, most DBEs hire people of color or women than any other constituency groups. So when they go out of business, it has a real trickle-down effect into either the communities and the airport community.
Yeah, thank you. A question for Mr. McDonald. So, Mr. McDonald, I'm the chair of the Aviation Subcommittee and certainly acutely aware of the lack of diversity in U.S. aviation and the need to attract new talent to ensure that this industry remains competitive. In the time I have remaining, which is about a minute, I think, can you discuss some of the successful initiatives that you've implemented within the DBE program that has attracted more participation from women and minority-owned firms, particularly related to aviation?
Yes, I would say that through our community partners, again, I'm with the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. And because of that, we have community partners. We have a group called the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance that works with the attraction and the retaining of businesses in our county. And through that group, we've also have a cohort of aviation type businesses. But from education and training and apprenticeship, we've been able to create a collaboration where we attract not only those businesses, but we engage those business opportunities and we align that with our DBE program. So our upside is by being an economic development office, also operating the small business program, also by administering the federal program. We leverage our resources and our partnerships. And again, that's one of our saving graces. The idea that we also have an aviation director who's supportive of the program. We have educational and institutional organizations that's willing to commit their resources. And this becomes, as you can imagine, attractive to the business community who recognizes your growth and your opportunity. Because as you know, businesses always speak to, do I have access to that employer, to that employee? Do I have access to that individual who has the skill set as well as the interest? So it's through our collaboration and our partnerships we've been able to have some success in growing new businesses, which also introduce opportunities for our DBEs to participate.
That's great. That's really helpful. I appreciate that. And according to my personal timer, I'm out of time, and I'll yield back. Thank you, Mr. McDonald.